So the year is 1998, and I decided this particular weekend I was going to take a trip down to Atlanta, which is something I typically did ever since I've owned a license. You know, a lot of times if I'm feeling stressed, I wanted to get away from St. Louis, I just hop in the car and go to Atlanta. So this particular weekend, I planned to make a trip to the A with my coworker at this time. And the vehicle of choice that we made the trip in, it was a Jeep Cherokee 1998. This was around the time that Jeep was killing the market and everybody had a Jeep Cherokee, a Grand Jeep Cherokee at that, excuse me. And so when we got down there, I typically do what I do. I stop by my Uncle Ed's house, who's at the top of the city. Always kick it with him, my cousins, you know, Jew and Red, we go hoop, whatever, or anything need to be done around the house. That's typically what happens. So before I make my way into the city, that's always my first stop. So get it to the city, hook up with one of the guys that's in the group, because at that time I was in the music industry. Hook up with one of the members of the group. We kind of kicked it, hung out for a little bit. Then all of a sudden, you know, he needed a ride home. So at this time, his parents stayed in Jackson, Georgia, which is down 75 South. So we riding down 75 South, you know, 3 black males, Jeep Cherokee, brand new. I mean, coal black, beautiful truck. And actually at that time I was driving. So we was taking turns driving, obviously coming down, but I just so happened to drive because, you know, I know the city, know where I'm going. Next thing you know, we look up, man, we see blue lights. We get pulled over. Now, around this time, I still was a young man with a temper, a bad attitude, just unruly in so many ways. I fucking hated the police. I mean, just it enraged me anytime they got behind me, right? At the same time, with anxiety along with that as well, too. So they came up to the vehicle. And, you know, and they started to question us and things of that nature. And right off the rip, I had an attitude. I was being nasty, being slick, shooting back. So the next thing you know, they asked us to get out of the vehicle. So we're standing on the side of the highway. But for some reason, the officer took the other two. He took, you know, the other member of my group that I was in at the time, and my coworker, my partner, you know, at that time, took them and started questioning them. But I was dealing with this particular officer by myself on my own. And he was just, you know, asking about the Rams, because this was around the time the St. Louis Rams were winning a lot of games and, you know, getting to the Super Bowl. We did win in 99. Well, they won. I'm still a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. But I was on the bandwagon, too. And, man, I was just being nasty. I was being slick, talking cash shit. Now, I'm in Georgia, south of the city of Atlanta, which, you know, pretty much is Atlanta. And I'm dealing with a redneck officer. And to this day, when I reflect back, I wonder why he never snatched my ass up or beat the shit out of me on the side of the highway, because he could have. But I could tell by the attitude and things that I was giving him, he was turning red and he was about there. But at that time, I was ignorant and I was not codified at all. Just ignorant, hot-headed, temper, angry, pissed, mad. So the next thing you know, as they typically do, they wanted to search the vehicle. Now, I didn't consent to it because I didn't own the vehicle, but the guy I was riding with, which it was his truck, he consented. And boom, what does he find? Fraudulent insurance papers. All right. And the crazy thing about it is, brother man who owned the truck, he never had insurance covered on the vehicle. So he decided to make fraud insurance cards. But not only did he make a fraud insurance card, he had copies. So it wasn't just one, it was copies. So, you know, the officer was like, yo, who does this belong to? I didn't say a word. I just looked at, you know, my partner. I ain't going to say nobody's name. Just looked at him and hit him with a cold look. So now we really jacked up. So as time goes on, you know, I'm still nasty. I'm still talking shit under my breath, pissed, hot. So they decided to let one of the members of the group, one of my co-fellow MCs in the group that sold me at that time, they decided to let him go. But the crazy thing about it was they didn't even have the common courtesy or decency to take him to a location. They made him walk down I-75 South. They made him walk down I-75 South down the shoulder of the road. And at that time, I don't believe he had a cell phone to make a call. So I believe he had to either walk to exit 212 or either 205. I believe it was 212, but that's still a long ass walk. So they took me and the other gentleman, you know, they took us in handcuffs. And so now I'm really hot. I'm pissed. I'm ready to whoop his ass, you know, for not even giving me a heads up of what's going on. But I can't even put the blame on him. So now they got us in handcuffs and now we're headed back to the station. But the crazy thing about it was, as we're being driven back to the station, they stop another vehicle with a black driver occupant, and they detain him for a second till another unit pulls up. And so once they did deal with him, they take us on to the station. So when we got to the jailhouse, excuse me, when we got to the facility where they was gonna hold us at, man, it looked like a mini prison. I seen a yard and barbed wire. I'm like, what is this? Because I've never experienced anything like this back in St. Louis. St. Louis, you get locked up, you just go to the jail. It's like a building, it's so small. But this was altogether something new. So they pull into the station. We pull into this bay. They pull us out the car. And I'm really hot now. I'm talking cash shit to this officer. Some of the other officers looked up like, yo, you should whoop his ass. And I look back and I reflect on that day. And, only thing I can say is, man, God probably was covering me. I don't know. But he didn't lay hands on me, because if I was an officer, I probably would have beat the shit out of myself. So anyway, we're in the holding tank, and this is the area where anybody's ever been in jail, you got all the jailhouse lawyers. They're going to tell you what you need to do to get off, and they know this and they know that. Typically, it comes from drug addicts and alcoholics, so I wasn't really trying to hear all that. So I'm in the cell. I'm in the holding part before they take you back, and I'm just bragging. Now, it's Friday, and I'm just like, yo, man, I'm finna get out of here. I'm finna call my dad. My dad gonna call my auntie, gonna bail out of here. Psh, this is my city. I got this, right? So I contact my father. He said he's going to call my aunt. So at that time, I'm sitting, my anxiety's raising up. I'm getting impatient. So I'm like, where the hell is my aunt? Next thing you know, it's nighttime and they come in the cell. They're giving us orange jumpsuits. And I'm like, okay, what part of the game is this? Because I've never been to jail before where I had to take off my street clothes. So now I'm taking off my street clothes and I'm being given a orange jumpsuit. I'm like, oh my God, what part of the game is this? So now my mind is blown and confused. I'm angry. My auntie ain't bailed me out. I don't know what the hell is taking so long, but it's Friday. So, if you get locked up on Friday night, you might as well get ready to do the weekend. But I think at that time in Atlanta, you could bail out on Saturday. So I'm like, sweat. I just do one night and I get out of here. So they separate me and my partner at the time. They put him in another pod and put me in a different pod. They were letters, pod A, pod B. So not even 10 minutes when I went into the pod, man, there was a fight between a black man and a white boy. Just that quick, and the guards didn't even come to stop it. They scuffled it out, and that was it. And they went back to their respectful little spaces. But the cell that I was in, I just so happened to be in a cell with two older gentlemen. One was white and one was black, but I specifically remember the white man's name was JD. And I think the older guy, the other brother's name, I think it was something like Lester or Chester, something like that. I can't recall. But, everything just kind of happened at its perfect timing because they were very kind to me. They I didn't have nothing on the books. I was in a place where people had been there for months and years, because if you skip a court date in Henry County at that time, they'd send a nationwide bounty hunter to come get you and retain you and bring you back so you could face the judge. And I'm like listening to all these horror stories. But anyway, getting a little bit ahead of myself. But they were kind to me. They were giving me juices, candy. These are people whose family was putting money on the books. They had like a little store they come around and roll around. So they took care of me. I had nothing to offer except just to be kind and cordial and respectful because they were my elders and we would talk stories. But at the same time, my anxiety was building up. The next morning, we woke up Saturday morning. A white boy walked in front of me and postured in front of me. So I stood up. This St. Louis in me. I stood up, got on guard, ready to fuck him clean up because I'm hot. I'm upset. I'm pissed. I'm angry. I got this violent energy I just need to let loose, right? See, a lot of times we're going to jail, and I've never done jail time, and I don't ever plan on doing it. It's just the simple fact of being in confinement and being contained and not being able to move and do what I want to do, and it builds up anxiety in the average individual. I know it does for me. So, the brother, man, was like, yo, they did that for a reason because you got a hot head. They sent him in here so you would fight him. So now they can hold you longer and charge you with something else. He was just like, hold your peace. And I'm thinking to myself, ain't no way they would go that far and that deep to do something like that. But come to find out, they would. So the very next day, man, I'm just rocking. I'm leaning. I'm losing my mind. And so we go out on the yard. So I'm like, damn, this really is like a prison. So my dad had made contact with my aunt at the time, I'm sure, because I kept calling. When you're in jail, you call over and over again, come get me out. So we on the yard, and the buddy I rolled down with, he come up to me and say, hey, man, I think I got a problem with this dude named Polo. So I'm like, man, point him out. And, man, let me tell y'all. I think it's in the movie Uptown Saturday Night with Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier, where they went to this little juke joint. They was looking for this gangster name. I think his name was Maurice or Geechee or something. I can't quite recall. So they was like, in the movie, all the big guys and the tall gangsters, they was like, call such and such. And when everybody spaced out, this little 4 feet high dude came out, and it's like, that's Maurice or whatever the character name was. So when I looked at this character Polo, I'm like, that's Polo. This dude was like frail. He wasn't even 5 feet tall. And I'm like, that's who you afraid of, bro? Like, and at that time, I was a big swole dude. You know what I'm saying? I was on my weight game, so I was swole like Tukey Williams. So I'm like, dude, out of all the people that we're around, you worried about him? And it was funny to me because me and the guy made eye contact. He just kind of shifted away like, okay, your partner's a bitch, but you might be a little different. So we just kind of nodded and we kind of gave each other that nod like, yo, he's just a bitch. We straight. So anyway, man, it was funny because I was like, anyway. So we went back to our pods and I'm rocking. I'm losing it. Next thing you know, I look up and I see this brother. He's reading a book by himself. Dark-skinned brother, you know, built like he work out, you know, slim like boxers type style, right? So I needed somebody to talk to. I was losing it. And it wasn't that I couldn't talk to JD or Lester in my own cell, but I needed somebody a little bit young I could relate to. For some reason, I was drawn to this guy. So I walked over to him, and you know, when you ever been locked up and you know, you have to approach somebody the right way. You can't come in like any type of aggression, any type of anger or anything. So I approached him. I'm like, hey, man, I need somebody to talk to, man. I'm kind of losing it. And his reply was, I've been waiting for you. He said, I noticed you when you came in. So that kind of threw me. And I'm like, damn. So I sat down. He was like, man, have a seat. And I said, yeah, man, I've been going through it. I'm angry. You know, I need somebody to talk to. And his reply to me, his question was, what did you do when you was on the street when those officers were talking to you? And I'm like, yeah, I copped an attitude. I got mad. I was pissed. He said, man, you in here because you ain't learned your lesson yet. So I'm like, okay. So and the thing about that is, man, he had the Bible in front of him and he was reading it. Now, for some reason, it was strange because with me and him sitting right there talking, it's like nobody else in the cell noticed us. It's like we were invisible. So I'm talking to this guy and I'm telling him my problems, what I was dealing with back in St. Louis. And he was just like, man, you not listening to what God is trying to tell you. And at that time, I was in and out with God because I've always struggled with the concept of God since I was a kid, real talk. So he was like, you're not listening to what God has been trying to tell you. He said, you've been repeating the same mistake for a long time in your life. And I'm thinking to myself, man, like, who the hell is this dude to tell me? But anyway, I was intrigued. So we started going over scriptures in the Bible, stuff that I had known since a kid, but he put it in such a context and made it simple and plain that, you know what, if I begin to apply these things, I probably wouldn't have went through half the things that I went through. And so we got to talking, man. And next thing you know, the whole day had went by. So, you know, I was at peace. I was calm. The white boy showed up again later that night, stood right in front of the cell, postured up. And I sat there and I stared at him. I just put my hands up like, I don't want no problems. And he walked off. Now, I'm glad he wasn't stupid enough to think that I was bitching out. But you know what? I had already took the advice of my wise elders that I was in the cell with. So he walked off. And I recalled everything that the brother had been telling me and talking to me about. So the next day, you know what I'm saying, I finally make bail. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm finna give my auntie, man, a mouthful. Because when I last checked with my father trying to get a status update, when I was asking where my aunt was, he was like, yeah, she'll be there. She went to choir rehearsal. So I was 38 hot. So anyway, by the time my aunt picked me up, I wasn't even tripping anymore. You know what I'm saying? But before I left the cell, I forgot to ask him what his name was. So when I approached him, I'm like, brother, I made bail. I'm out and this, that, and the third. And I said, what is your name? I never asked you. And he replied and said, my name is Carlos. Chills went through my body because that was my name at that time. Carlos is my former name. So for him to come out and say that his name is Carlos, it really sent chills through my spine. I'm like, okay, this is unreal. This is crazy to me. Right. So I make bail and, you know, walk out, see my auntie. Now, this time I was angry on the inside. Now I'm happy. She took me right to Wendy's and everything. So, you know, everything was straight. And then, you know, my partner, I had to wait for him to make bail. So we got the hell on up the road and I had to make a return. I specifically think the date was November 19th. I had to go back and see the judge, and I was going to go back and see the judge because of everything that I heard with the guys on the inside of the cell about not going to see the judge and how they send a bounty hunt after you. I didn't need those problems. I had enough in St. Louis. So got back, you know, we hit the road, and the whole time I'm thinking about this brother, man. And, you know, before I left, I got his contact. I got his address. I never got a number, man. You know, this is really like pre cell phone technology age. So I got his contact as far as his address. So upon going back to Atlanta, Georgia to go to court, went to court. My Uncle Ed had hired EIE to my uncle. And also I want to say happy birthday to my father, Red Rooster. Today is his physical degree. And I always tell people, man, my father's the greatest man alive, man. So shout out to my dad. I value you, dude. I love you. And I tell people all the time, you're the greatest man alive, but you the one Christ that I do know. I don't know where I'd be without my mom or my dad, So, but anyway, so after leaving court, I literally had to do 16 hours, 8 hours going, 8 hours coming to go to court for less than an hour. And just to get this situation cleared up. So before I left, I decided to stop by the jailhouse. I wanted to go see my partner because I knew he was going to be in there for a minute, because a lot of those guys just didn't have money to get an attorney or to bail themselves out or just didn't have family. So I go to the clerk and I was like, yo, saying this around visiting hours. So, hey, I want to see, Carlos such and such. I'm not going to put his last name out there. She goes through the book. She scrolls and scrolls and scrolls. She says, we don't have a record of that person ever have been in this facility. Excuse me? I said, you made a mistake. Go back and check. I said, his name is Carlos such and such. He from Florida. He got caught, trafficking on I-75 side. He was pulled over. And I said, he slim and got twisties. She said, she went through the book again. She said, baby, there is nobody, we have no record of this person ever even existing or have been in this jail. Chills went through my body. First of all, that man had no reason to lie to me to tell me that or give me the wrong name. And I have his address to contact him. I wrote letters, never got a response. So over time, I got to thinking, who was that? What was that? I've always heard these stories about people encountering angels and making contact with God in the most miraculous ways. And I'm going to tell you, man, with the way my mind operates, man, I really just don't believe in spooky shit. I don't believe in stuff like that. But I sit up here to this day before you and tell you no lie. The woman said she had no record of the man. And as we sat when I was in jail, it was like we was invisible. Nobody could see. Nobody saw us. It's just like we were invisible. I'm like, this can't be what I think it is. But everything he told me set me back on the path to get right and be obedient to the word. So I told my parents this story when I got home. And it was a tearjerker. I was emotional. I was telling my mom, I was sitting in the kitchen. And at that time, my oldest kids, me and their mother was together, even though she had already filed child support papers. But she was teary-eyed too. I just couldn't explain to this day what had happened. Man, I've been running a long time. I have been. And the reason why is because growing up as a kid, I didn't understand the concept of having to believe in something, to be moral, to be righteous, and do the right thing. I didn't understand it. And also because I saw that it did not work for black people. It doesn't change the way that black people say they believe each other all the time. Killers say they believe in God. Murderers, rapists, molesters say they believe in God. You understand? And it's like, is there an accountability? Do you have to qualify? Is there any type of qualification to believe in a higher power to make you moral and make you right? And then growing up, we didn't grow up poor. We didn't grow up in the hood. So Monday through Friday, I was dealt with the worst treatment, the targeted, done wrong, right? By people who did not look like me, and then enter a church on Sunday morning and see that very same image where tons of black people were emotionally and just worshiping and just losing their mind. It didn't make sense to me. So all my life, I've been searching. I've been trying to understand this thing called God. And eventually it would lead me into the conscious community. It would lead me to the pro-black movement, the Black Power movement. The 5% nation. Now I'm gonna tell you something, man. I'm gonna always be beloved and grateful to Allah's 5% because those who practice the culture are right and exact. But what I begin to understand is that we retain information for what to do what. A lot of people are into history. Do we remember what happened in Africa? Do we know that we're this and we know that that? That's not, I don't care what happened in history or where I come from. I do care about where I come from, but what does that do to help solve our problems? Or people say you should eat a certain way, or you should do this and you should study that and you should believe in this and you should believe in that. And nowhere on this planet do I see non-white people in a good situation where they're not dominated by white supremacy racism. Because to me, and I'm not going to even call it an opinion, the biggest problem on the planet is the system of white supremacy. And everybody non-white falls up under that banner. So what I look for is to see what works. See, a lot of times people say, What they claim to be a blessing is something that another man has created or produced that offers them a problem solving situation or a better condition for the life that they live. That's not a blessing. A blessing to me is using the greatness of your mind to solve problems and live life on your own terms, to be able to exist and control your own destiny. That's what a blessing is, because everything that we consider a blessing, it comes from the mind of a man. The cars we drive, that came from the mind of a man, manufactured and produced. The house we lived in, man conceptualized how to construct the house. Man conceptualized how to put an airplane in the sky. Man takes his time to go to schools, learning institutions of study to understand the human body, to perform surgery on you. That has nothing to do with God. That has everything to do with the greatness of man. Man is God and God is man, one and the same. As it is above, so it shall be below. The situation the problem that I've always had when it comes to non-white people is the application of your belief. Lazy. You give it up to God. You let go and let God. I can't do that. God gave me tools and a mind to solve problems and to do things. Now, I understand certain things are out of our control. I'm not saying that God does not move in mysterious ways, because my understanding of God might be a little different than yours. But for the record, and this is going to disappoint a lot of people from my conscious community, I believe in God. I don't believe God is a mystery. What is a mystery is our ability to solve problems and outthink those who dominate us. That's the mystery. And I'm sorry to disappoint people, but I'm a logical individual. No matter what I get involved in, no matter what I partake in, I'm a thinker, man. I'm going to sit and I'm going to observe what works, what doesn't work. I'm going to observe what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. I don't have to turn that logical capability off. You use the mind to conceptualize life and put locations on things in the physical realm. So why would I not question God? I could question God. I can question God. I may not understand what God is doing, and sometimes it may not be meant for us to understand, but I was raised not to question God, and I'm telling you, I don't agree with that. I teach my kids, you can question God, because if you want an answer, you better ask a question. If it says seek and you shall find, then you can ask a question and find the answer. Why would that be exempt? I'm ready to do work, and I honor, like my cousin and her husband, Pastor William Francis, and my cousin TT, they do work, man. Even before I begin to understand and redirect my path back home, kind of like the prodigal son, right? But I've never really defied my father, you know what I mean? And, you know, my brothers don't hate me. But I'm starting to redirect my path back home. But the way that I understand is not like the way I understood it, the way I was raised and believed things. And I want to let me put this disclaimer out here. I was never forced to believe in God. I was never forced to join the church. My father and my mother never did that. And my father's always told me that he's respected my mind, because I've always been a book reader. I've always been a thinker. And I've always done research to find out, are these things real? Are these things true? And I will never abandon that. That's just who I am. That's me. But for the people who say that they believe in God and have no value in one another, kill one another, no compassion, talk to each other with hostility, bad customer service, bad relationships, gossip, deceitful, man, you can't believe in God. This is why everybody's not qualified to tell me about God. We got family members, man, that stand in the pulpit, don't even reach out to you and tell you how they thinking about you and love you, but call themselves a minister and a servant of God. You are disqualified. You can't love something that you've never seen, someone you've never laid physical eyes on, and hate the person that you see every day. You can't serve God and not serve man. You are a lie. Yeah, God is real. God is an energy and God is action. And I see God like my father. Boy, I told my dad, you know, like, Dad, you really worried about me and this thing with God. Because a lot of people believe there's a burning hell. I don't know if hell exists, and I don't know if heaven exists. But all I know is that I know God is real because of the things that has happened in my life. And I've gone through a journey. And I'm sorry to disappoint some people. And let me tell you another thing. If a person believes, so what? If a person believes in the mystery God, so what? Let them be. Because if they doing positive things, if they can help solve you a problem, then what difference does it make what they believe in, what they don't believe in? I respect any and all people. This is why I had to really learn to stop criticizing people, everything and everyone. I had to, man. You got to let people be. And plus, according to VGQ, to the code, which is Victims Guaranteed Qualification, a person has the right to believe and do whatever they want to, because we're all victims. Whether you agree with that or not, I agree with it. And some people take the concept of the code gets past the greatest of minds, for people who read that book and the works of Neely Fuller Jr. and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. That's a whole nother story, but that's what I base a lot of my life on. But I'm getting back to this thing, because, if a friend of mine told me something, she said, I see your grandfather all on you. She don't know nothing about me to tell me about my grandfather. She don't know my grandfather was a well-known pastor in the community back in Wellston, Missouri, who did work for the community, for the kids, for people that was in jail, getting people out of jail, going to see people in the hospital. He did work. Hi, Peaches. My grandfather did work. So people can't tell me. So for her to say that she sees my grandfather upon me sent chills through my body. What do you see about my grandfather being upon me? My father even said, you remind me a lot of your, raise your hand up, baby. They can't see you. Hold on a second. You a big girl. Come here. You heavy. So this is something that that my dad always talked about. So, man, I've been redirected back home, and I had to think about this story from years ago because, I don't care to understand and know everything, but my main concern is being a problem solver. And everybody's not qualified to talk to me about God. Hell, there were people in the 5% nations I didn't want to hear nothing about a lesson about. Around that time, there were people in the conscious community who were not qualified to tell me certain things because I know they wasn't problem solvers. So this is what happened to me in 1998, and that story has never left my mind. That time, that person, that individual, I still know his image to this day if I was to see him. If he is a real person. And I know a lot of people like, man, this dude, he talking crazy. You don't know what you're talking about, man. You can take it for whatever you want. But one thing I ain't mentally sick. I ain't ill. You know what I mean? Ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. You know what I mean? You can go back and watch a movie. All right. Okay, baby. That's my heart. You know what I mean? That's the baby of the pack. But basically, man, this is my story. And people have always wondered about what I believe in, how I think. Some people have been so terrified to even have a conversation or even become a friend because they thought I was an atheist, believed in the devil. I talk a language that terrifies them because it causes you to think. It causes you to challenge what your parents have taught you. Do you understand? And so with a lot of things like Rob Love said, intelligence, I wouldn't wish that on nobody. It was funny when he said it, but it makes a lot of sense. But all I'm saying is I got work to do. You got work to do. And this is why now the banner is Humanity Works. Man, I wasn't finna come into this first episode doing all the like, share, subscribe, and the sponsors. No, this is a one-on-one conversation that I'm having with you. Oh yeah, I got my little mic flag. I'm proud about that. I'm trying to grow the brand. So basically, man, that's what it's all about. And I just want to solve the problem of injustice. I want to solve the problem of injustice. And that goes for all people. The definition of justice is guaranteeing that no one is mistreated and those who need help the most get the most constructive help. That is not bound to color. Peaches, give me a second, baby. Let me finish this up and you can go through the books. All right. I'm gonna need you to be a little bit quiet. Okay. She gonna do an interview too. You know what I'm saying? I might be breeding a little podcaster, but basically, man, we all got work to do and we need to stop being critical of one another and be able to help and service one another. That's a part of being codified. And listen, for the thing about it is, like I said, a lot of y'all claim y'all have belief with no morality behind it. And I don't be in church and I don't know everything about the Bible as I used to at one point. But I guarantee you, I carry myself the way that the Creator would have us to carry ourselves with a lot of people. A lot of people who I know don't care for me, have said things behind my back, have called and asked me for help. And they don't even know that they said something nasty. But I helped out anyway. Especially when it comes to them children. I ain't got no issue with anybody. The way that I think is the way that I think. I continue to evolve, but I'm only going to evolve into the realm of problem solving and trying to figure out problems and rising above the madness, which is called black culture. I'm coming up out of it. This is why I tell you, I'm not pro-black. This is not about black power. Because of white supremacy, racism never existed. Half the stuff that we say is black on, black this, we wouldn't be saying that. Or people who marry other people outside of our race, which race is really only to white supremacists because a group has to come together for a purpose. We don't have anything that we can dominate anybody with. So, you know, people trip off interracial marriage, and people always want to go around talk about who's a coon and who's a Negro peon. Listen, as long as the system of white supremacy exists, we all coons. We all Negro peons. We all sellouts. You go buy gas, you're a sellout. You go buy groceries, you're a sellout. You pay for cable, you're a sellout. You go work a job, you're a sellout. Stop the madness. And if a person decides to marry somebody who's not black, that's their business. Because if we never knew anything about racism or the injustices in this world, seeing somebody with another person of their race would never be an issue. And I'm not making this into an interracial marriage post, but I'm trying to get people to understand, stop being attached to color and start getting attached to results. I know a lot of people who are married to non-black people who do a lot of community, who do a lot good for the community. And I know people who have married a black man and a black woman, they come together and they're abusive and their kids is killing and murdering up the neighborhood. So listen, we got to rise above that minute way of thinking. We got to become more broad and expand the way that we think and get things back to the way that they want to be, that they should be, because the world is getting blacker. Let's make no qualms about it. A lot of people want to get, you know, I don't care to talk about white people. I don't care to talk about extension. I don't care to talk about how evil they are. That stuff means nothing to me. We're focused on the wrong thing. You know, people worried about, people not saying about whether black lives don't matter and white lives. People mad about Kanye wearing a shirt. You should be mad about what we got going on in our community. White validation, let it go. So basically, man, I want to let people know, my family know, man, I'm not going to hide behind. I'm not going to keep that a secret. I've been redirected back to do work according to God's will. And I always say, when man exists according to God's will, humanity works. Yeah. So a lot of people I'm going to lose. A lot of people going to look at me and say whatever they want to. Whatever the case may be, I don't care, because it ain't even about you. It ain't about me. It's about being humane. It's about doing, you know, things according to the will of God. And the will of God is problem solving, action, energy, value, compassion, love, understanding, patience. You understand? And a lot of times your savior is going to come in the form of a person that you may culturally not even understand. And I need y'all to understand that. So basically, man, 1998 was a very pivotal year. It was a very pivotal moment. And that situation right there is something I have to reflect back on to get myself in order. So with that being said, man, I always tell you, man, I value you, then I love you. I value you enough to love you the right way. Again, giving a shout out to my father. Today is his physical degree day. Giving a shout out to my niece, Sky Regina. It's also her physical degree day. And I also want to give a shout out to my sister on yesterday. Yesterday was her physical degree day. Want to give a shout out to my cousin Tracy. Her physical degree day is on the 13th. And I got to give a shout out, because everybody in the family know I'm crazy about this one. Got to give a shout out to Jazzy Jazz, October the 11th. That's my girl right there. And also, I want to give a last shout out to my cousin, Queen G. You awesome. You amazing. You do what you got to do, and you come back stronger. All right. Peace.